Hello, everybody, and welcome to the February edition of Board Table Talk. I'm here with Erica Hermans, Board President, and a special guest today. We have Abby Deerdorf, Board Vice President. We got tons to talk about today, but first, how are you guys doing?
Doing well. I'm happy that Abby is able to join us. This might be the first time that we've had someone in the Vice President role come in on Board Table Talk, not for lack of asking, so I'm glad she's here today.
We did introduce you on the last one, but
I apologize.
That's right. We won't bring it up.
Thank you so much for having me.
So the first thing we'd like to do, Abby, since you're new here, is we talk about the presentations first. So today we're going to talk about first the work session presentations and then the board meeting presentations. So the work session started right off with the comprehensive plan. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that means for a district from a board's perspective?
Yeah, so the comprehensive plan is a continuous evaluation process. So the steering committee for the comprehensive plan involves a lot of different stakeholders. It involves administrators, teachers, staff, even parents and other interested community members. Basically, I think Dr. Murray mentioned that in this case, everyone who had a desire to provide input this year actually was a part of this process. But really, it's giving us kind of the broad view of the strategic direction of the district. So this comprehensive process happens every 3 years, and it's officially kind of just, again, setting where we are all marching towards. So this year, the comprehensive plan, and I wouldn't say this year, because a lot of the goals that we had in the last comprehensive planning process are continuing in this comprehensive planning process, but we have 4 priorities. One of which being math and ELA scores, making sure that we're seeing growth in those areas. Priority 2, again, kind of in line with the math and ELA scores, but with a deeper focus on providing supports for students that have historically underperformed in those areas. And then the third priority being making sure that we have a multi-tiered system of support implemented across the district, and supports can be academic supports, social supports, behavioral supports, which has, if you've attended any board meetings, has been a topic that has come up from time to time. And then the last piece is around student interventions, right? More about just making sure that our students have the supports and the interventions that they need to be successful, which again goes beyond academics. So this to me is not anything that is new. I mean, every year the board, we get together with Mr. Rizzo and our assistant superintendents to talk about what their goals are for the year. But this, a lot of their yearly goals, right, should be aligned to the district's overall mission, for this 3-year period.
Yeah, in the previous comprehensive plan, we did redo the mission and vision, but that doesn't happen every single 3 years. That's
correct.
Much longer.
The mission and vision did not change this year. I mean, they did reevaluate it, and Dr. Murray, as she presented, said we felt like it still hit the mark in terms of cultivating academic excellence, embracing inclusivity, fostering wellness, a focus on technology. So, given that didn't change, I would not expect that we would see a big shift in our priorities from the last planning season to what we approved in February.
Right. I think having that opportunity to review the comprehensive plan on its cycle of when we actually do it and review it, and then presenting it as we did at the board meeting, and then also having the presentations or work sessions regarding the superintendent's goals and the assistant superintendent's goals. Combining those 3 are a really great way for everyone, including the board, including the community, including staff and students, even though it's not the most exciting presentations that we have, is just a way for everyone to clearly know what the vision of the district is and where our goals are to go and kind of where we've been in building upon that, so that we're mindful of that everything that we're doing is taking us in alignment with those goals.
Yeah, we're all marching forward in the same, right?
Yeah,
same goals.
All right, so Western Center budget, and I meant to plug a little bit earlier. All the presentations are available on RCTV's YouTube if you want to rewatch them after our conversation here. But the Western Center budget, Mr. Livingood came in and gave us a really nice overview of kind of the inner workings of their budget and their district in itself. So, what else did we get from that?
I get a lot from that. So I'm speaking both as a board director, but also a parent of a student who attends the Western Center. So even before Mr. Livingood went into the budget presentation, he wanted to share a little bit about, the overall mission, some of the good work that's being done there, programs, right, that are offered there, because as I mentioned at the board table, there are many different pathways to success after graduation. And we want to make sure that, what we offer here at Springford is not one size fits all. And so as I said to Mr. Livingood at the end of his presentation, I've always been a big supporter of what they do at the Western Center. But being a parent now and hearing firsthand the experience, I think that there is so much value, not just in terms of being able to build a skill that you're going to be able to use and move forward in your career and your life after Springford. But I also think from a social aspect, that's one of the big, things that I hear from a lot of people that attend there, that to be able to be in classes, small classes with other students that have like interests really does a lot for these students socially. And we know that that is big when it means, when it goes to overall success in the schools. So I love hearing from Mr. Livingood anytime he comes.
And they're working with kids from different districts too, so they make
Yeah.
different friends as well through that.
100%.
And we've done a lot of work over there. If anyone gets a chance to go over, you got to check it out. It's really nice space over there.
I mean, I know this won't come out, but there is an open house tonight, and I plugged it. I said, if you have a student that is as young as 6th grade, it is never too early to start to go over there and explore what they have to offer, because I think a lot of people are surprised. I think it's one of the best technical schools in the state, frankly.
And they're consistently adding and changing and just trying to make the programs better.
Yeah.
I was going to say, and you don't even have to have a student to go if you want to use the salon. You can always make an appointment.
You have been?
I have been to the salon before.
Yes.
It was awesome. And it's really like just an interesting story about going to the salon. The student that did my nails now is working at a salon right down the street from my house doing
That's
hair.
great.
So I've been meaning to get in to see him. So
Yeah.
that's great.
And that's some of what Mr. Livingood mentioned when he highlighted the achievements of the students. We recently had Skills USA competitions, and it was highlighted on our Springford site, the Springford Gold, Silver, and Bronze winners. But also, you talk about students coming out of, for example, cosmetology, fully licensed, right? Ready to go, into their career, right after graduation. You talk about kids on co-op that, in their senior year potentially are going out into the workforce for half the day and earning money, right?
Yeah.
Or in their final year earning credits that can easily be transferred. For example, like the commercial arts program, where I think we have a partnership with Kutztown University, where if you're doing what you need to do, you're potentially walking in the door at Kutztown with 12 to 15 credits under your belt. That is money. That's a saving. So a lot of good work that's being done there. But you asked about the budget.
I was going to say that talking about the money is a good segue into the budget, and I think I know you'll get into more specifics on that, but I think when talking about any budget, everybody likes to also hear what you're getting for that. So it's great that he gets to come and talk about the programs and show his pride and hear from the other members on the JOC about their pride in what the community is getting with their tax dollars over there. So that's great.
I mean, we have to invest in our students, and I said at the table, I was like, not just Springford students, we're talking about the students at Upper Perk, at Potts Grove, our community, right, at large. It's important to invest in them. And not to look at our buildings in a very siloed way. So as far as the budget goes, the good news is the Western Center started their budget process earlier. I sit on the Joint Operating Committee for the Western Center, so we actually started our budget discussions in November, which is very much in line with what we do here at Springford. There were a couple of new asks on the table that Mr. Livingood is wanting to be incorporated into the budget, but I would say the most notable one is the addition of an assistant principal. Just because when you talk about the staff and the educators over at the Western Center, I mean, some very diverse backgrounds in terms of some people coming from the trades, some people being, primarily educators and teachers that have kind of transitioned to, being able to teach a trade. So, and you look at the student growth population. I think Mr. Livingood mentioned there's been a 200 student increase since 2020. over at the Western, don't hold me to that, but I believe that's what
pretty
he
sure that's
said
pretty
in the
close.
presentation, coupled with the fact that we know that, our students at the Western Center have needs, just as they have here at Springford in terms of special education. And so we just want to make sure that they're supported. And given the growth and, frankly, the demand, I would love to say that everyone that applies, and I know Mr. Livingood would want this to be the case, everyone who applies gets in, but there are a limited number of seats. But the demand is increasing. So we want to make sure that we have our students, fully supported over there.
Yeah, and that's very important. But talking about supporting our students, the last presentation was about Curtains the Musical, which is Friday at 7 p.m., Saturday at 1 p.m., and Saturday also at 7 p.m. And they came and they gave a wonderful, quick little production for us.
Yeah. It's always my favorite one of the year. It's your favorite one of the year, too, isn't it?
It is, and I always, give credit where credit's due. Is the previous board member, Colleen Zazowski. That was always, I think it had stopped for a little bit as we were, maneuvering back into in-person meetings and all of that. And but it's truly one of the most special times and most fun board meeting because it's really exciting to see the joy that the students as well as the staff that work with them have to showcase themselves and get that excitement going for the musical.
Yeah. So, Mr. Savelli, Mr. Perry, I know I'm missing some other staff members that are, have a hand in helping to shape, the performance and our students. And but kudos to everybody involved. And the students, I say like it doesn't need to be said, but it does need to be said, like are amazing. The choreography, the singing, the front of house. I know, my son's in 5th grade now and he's doing front of house for Seussical the Musical, and I know he's gonna have to fold programs. So there's all those little things that add up to what we get to experience come this weekend, and I'm very excited for it.
And what's cool about it, and I appreciate this, the crew in Curtains, and even like the technical aspect, which is kind of where I typically live, are actually visible in the show. Like between sets, they have scenes and they're actually acting between the scenes. It's pretty cool. It's like what Mr. Safelli said, is it's a musical within a musical. So it's kind of the whole story about putting on a musical, and you see the moving of the sets, and it's part of the show instead of just lights down, they're moving the
That's
sets, which is
awesome.
pretty cool.
Love it.
So hopefully we'll see some people out Friday and Saturday. So into the meat of the meetings. Ready to go into this?
I'm ready.
All right. So topics from the board meeting. The first thing we'll talk about, we'll get right into it, is Resolution 2025-01, the Welcoming Schools Resolution. I will leave the table open, and you can give us a little insight onto what that resolution is.
Okay. You want me to go first? I guess I'll go first since you're looking at me. I say this.
we're both
I
looking
say
at
this because Abby, has been instrumental in bringing this resolution to bringing it to the table for a vote, and I think it's a resolution that really needs to be had. So, as both of us discussed, both in the January meeting and the work session in February, as well as the voting meeting in February, this is just about reaffirming that mission and vision that we talked about before, right? It's to support our students academically, but not to discount other aspects of their experience here at Springford, embracing inclusivity, fostering wellness, and frankly, as a result of a lot of the national climate, there have been families that have reached out to us in person, when we see them out in public and or, via email that are questioning what is the stance of the school board. And, I think that this is not a time to shy away from if our community needs that reaffirmation that we are still a welcoming district and that we still embrace an inclusive environment where people feel comfortable bringing, who they are to school every day, that they are comfortable coming to Springford to learn and grow and thrive without fear or without concern about any potential disruptions, then I think we have a duty as a board to reassure them.
I think also in that climate, in our country right now, it's unclear how many of these changes really will affect us, whether you support them, whether you don't support them. It's kind of, wading through all of the information that we're receiving and figuring out how does this exactly impact me? How does this impact my family? How does this impact my community? And, as Ms. Hermans mentioned, it is an affirmation and a declaration reinstating the values and goals that we have here at Springford, but also it's legal. We are legally required to provide a free and appropriate public education to students living within our district. So it's making that stance clear as well. And, I kind of heard different things, and it's like, do we really need that here? Is this a problem here? And I think it's important to be proactive and clear to anybody that may be wondering where we stand and what we support. Yeah. So I'm excited.
And as I said, I think it was the work session, like I would love for the vote to be unanimous, but of course it only takes 5 to get anything done in this district. Mm-hmm. But I'm happy to report it was a unanimous vote. So this is not a political, as we have Dems and Republicans on the board, this is not a political issue. This is an issue about protecting the rights of students, which frankly, in my opinion, should not be controversial.
Right. So it's always great to be proactive instead of reactive. Mm-hmm. I'll say that. Being proactive brings us to the budget. Mm-hmm. We're always proactive here with the budget.
That is an amazing transition.
So how's the budget doing this time of year?
It's business as usual.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Deardorff and I, we sit on the finance committee together along with Mr. Jackson and Mrs. Westwood. But it's kind of the quiet month. And I say the quiet month from a report standpoint, but not a quiet month from a finance department standpoint. Mr. Fink would probably interrupt me if I said it was a quiet month because there's so much work that is being done. So where are we? In November, we Mr. Fink presented the proposed preliminary budget, which again is a starting point for the entire budgetary cycle process. In January, we approved the proposed preliminary budget, and we have to do that because it's frankly a check mark that the state requires us to do. Mm-hmm. So we did that in January. Mr. Fink and his department applied for exceptions from the state, which again is all part of this Act 1 index process. And we're in the situation now where budget books have gone out to departments and they're coming back in, and the finance department is analyzing that data to figure out what is it that we need for next year and what is it that we can potentially forego or defer. So we'll be having more of those conversations in finance in March and April. And likewise, as a board, we're looking at personnel as we normally do this time of year. So we're looking at who's slated to retire, what are our needs in terms of do we need to backfill the position? Are there other ways to look at those positions? We're doing a lot in the personnel committee, which again, Mrs. Deardorff and I sit on, where we're meeting with our support groups. This year it was our school police, our maintenance, our nurses, and our instructional assistants.
And IT.
And IT, thank you, and IT support while it's not a negotiation process, it is an opportunity for them to come to the table and share with us what's working in their roles, what's not working, and then figuring out what supports we can provide them to be able to, make sure that we can keep good people here.
Right, that's awesome. So Spring City, is there any updates on Spring City? We didn't really discuss much about it at the board table, but I always like to bring it up at board table talk to.
I would say that Spring City is, again, kind of business as usual. So I'm really excited because I know in March the board has been invited to go back to the Spring City premise and walk around and see the progress that has been made since we were last there I know we were there in July. I feel like we were also there in September, potentially. There was, but in the fall, when it was warmer. So I'm really going to be excited to see, what does it look like, and start to be able to visualize students there.
I do think there's ceilings, roofing, and walls, so they were going to start heating the building, I think this week. So that's exciting, because I know the last time I drove by, it didn't look like something that you could heat. So
it's been cold.
It's been very
Let's
cold.
Get them some heat over there.
Yeah.
And I'm incredibly excited to go visit in March, because I did miss the other 2 tours.
That's right.
So I didn't get to wear my hard hat.
But still, knock on wood, still on track for an August 2025 grand opening.
Awesome. That's coming up soon.
Mm-hmm.
It's really exciting. All right, speaking of other stuff going on, we got curriculum. They're in their 7-year cycle. This every 7 years they have to update certain things. This year, what's up for review was math 9 through 12, science 9 through 12, social studies 10th, health 5 through 8, and 11th, all up for a curriculum review. Can you tell me and the community a little bit about what happens during these curriculum reviews so it would be in C&T, the committee, I'm guessing they talk a little bit about it, and then it comes to the table for approval.
I mean, the curriculum review process, even though we generally talk about this at this time of year and into the spring, and that's why you see so many different action items on the agenda. I think we had 20, I think we went from...
It was A to Z.
It was A to the Z to this year. A to Z in terms of curriculum action items related to the review cycle. So a lot of our programs are reviewed on a 7-year cycle, and there is no stopping in our curriculum department in terms of either reviewing or evaluating, reviewing, and or implementing curriculum. So this is not uncommon. This year it was it 9 to 10? I'm trying to look and see. It was 9 to 12 math and science, correct?
Math and science, social studies was 10th grade,
Yeah, and
health was 5 through 8, and 11th grade.
And health, yeah. So the curriculum review started last year, and really with Dr. Gardy, Dr. Reimheiner, Ms. Angelucci, and everyone else in the department. So I don't want to say that it just happened in February, because that would be discounting a lot of the hard work that goes into it. But some of the things that we talk about in the curriculum meeting are things like, of course, wanting to understand who was it that they were evaluating, how did they come to the conclusion of coming forward with this vendor. We talk about what makes this vendor different from who we're currently using. How do we see it being a better fit for our students? And of course the costs, what are the costs and how did we negotiate the costs, and were we able to get better deals with with longer term contracts? And so it's a lot of the although we didn't really have a lot of discussion with it at the table in February, it's not for lack of discussion. It just typically happens in our curriculum meetings. So I'm really happy to see us continue to evaluate and support, especially I think it was Mr. Jackson, who frankly was
a champion of
I
curriculum.
I was pleasantly surprised with this comment about just really being a big advocate for the science and the math programming, and feeling really good about these action items. And I say that I'm surprised. I'm not surprised. Mr. Jackson is an advocate for students. But, as you know, he can have a very critical eye when it comes to different action items on the agenda. And he was all thumbs up with this. And, I think this just goes to show that the board is supportive of opening up more pathways, making sure that we have the right materials that lead to student success, but also opening up more pathways. So, for example, back in November, I don't know if you recall, we had the curriculum department come forward with a recommendation of making computer science a major, not just a minor in 9th grade, which is going to open doors up to students potentially being able to get to those higher level computer science courses faster for those that have that interest and passion in doing so. Not taking any away from those that might be on the fence or unsure. We still offer it as a minor program, and there's still pathways to get there. But for students where it makes sense, again, it goes back to Spring Forward not being one size fits all. Let's analyze it and put it forward and get the board votes to be able to do it.
I think we do talk often about different ways of measuring success. So it could be through standardized testing. It could be through other opportunities that students have. And we have identified that math and science are areas where we do need some improvement in the district. So, again, talking about budgets, it's always good for everyone to see where exactly the money is being spent. It's being spent on something that has been identified as somewhere where we need to improve. So it's exciting to be able to see the impact that these will have. Keeping in mind, though, it's just not curriculum. It's just not standardized tests is way to evaluate the whole student. So,
right. Great. So then that kind of is what came out of curriculum and tech. We have, let's go to property a little bit, the facility master plan and facility assessment. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so Mrs. Deardorff is on the property committee, so she probably could do a better job than I can, but I'll kick off, unless you want to kick off.
Well, I was just going to say that, the master plan is so far we're in the third stage
This
of a multi-leveled approach to.
and that's where I was going to go.
Yeah.
I think we're entering the third
Entering.
phase of it. So the first phase for the community was the GISA project, which happened back, I want to say 2021, although I think we just kind of wrapped up that project like about a year ago this time. The second phase, of course, is Spring City. And as we just reported, all on track there in terms of 2025 open for that school and building. And it was really about renovating what was basically a 60-year-old building that had never had one major renovation in the district. So there were some things that, like, and again, my opinion, we've only been on the board for 3 years. In my opinion, it's long overdue. And so we needed to be able to renovate that building, make sure that we have facilities that are in line with meeting those district goals, right? We talk about math and ELA improvement. Well, you can't improve in those areas if you don't have the facilities to support strong learning. Yep. And so Spring City is part of that. Like, let's add the space for what we know is coming down the pike with growth in the Springford area from a development standpoint, from a municipal standpoint, but also let's make sure we have the space in these buildings to be able to support what our vision is for the district longer term. And so those were the first two phases. The third phase is really going to be looking at our middle school model and determining, is it really conducive, from an educational standpoint? Like, does it make sense to have 5 and 6 in one building and 7 in another building that is on a completely different schedule? I say another building, but it's kind of all together. But still, you have two groups of students that are on different models, one being more elementary, one being more secondary in the same building. Does that make sense? Right. So we need to partner with a firm, and that was what happened is in December for the next two phases, middle school and potentially even entertaining full-day kindergarten. We wanted to partner with a firm. We put a request out for proposal, and second interviews happened in February, and we came forward with one firm that is out of Ambler. And again, that was evaluated based on their experience, their referrals, their design philosophy, and the district is ready to, now that we've approved them, we're ready to move forward. Let's keep going.
Awesome. So now we'll move into policy. We did see a rescinded policy. What exactly does that mean?
So we actually saw a lot of policies on the agenda for February. So we did have one rescinded policy, which was Title IX. And then you subsequently saw a lot of Title IX related policies under first read that, again, assuming that there aren't any issues between now and March, will get approved, right, or come up for vote and hopefully be approved in March. So I made a comment at the table a little bit about what's happening. I think it can be confusing for the community because, Title IX is all about protecting students and protecting folks from sexual harassment, sexual discrimination. Does it look like this district is rolling back on our commitment to that? And that's absolutely not the case. So for those that aren't familiar, and again, this goes back to what we talked about with the national climate. So last November, this board approved the 2024 regulations that were put in place by the previous administration. It did a few things, in my opinion. I shouldn't say in my opinion, it did a few things factually. The things that it did was it brought in the definition of sexual harassment. It brought in investigation procedures. It provided protections for parenting students and or pregnant students. It reaffirmed the rights of LGBTQ+ students. So there was a lot, again, in my opinion, a lot of good that came about with approving the 2024 regulations in November. But as we know, when administrations change, things can quickly turn on a dime. And so what happened in January was a federal judge had struck down the previously approved 2024 regulations, and in effect, they're null and void, and we've gone back to the 2020 regulations. And so that is why you're seeing all that you're seeing on the agenda, is because we do need to be in line with the law. And this is one thing that we talked about in policy, is to make sure that while there might be procedural differences in Title IX reporting, which is what, just to summarize, a large part of this is kind of that. It does not mean that we are rolling back on our commitment to our students, or in any way rolling back our anti-discrimination policies, because there are protections. There are, for example, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act that requires us to have that lens of not discriminating on the basis of gender, on the basis of race, on the basis of background, socioeconomic status, anything along those lines. And so we are still very much in line with our duties as a public school
That's where
system.
we want to be.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Anything to add on that? Or are you all right?
You got what I was going to say
Yeah, you
about
cleared most
the
of it.
state. We are required to follow state law as well as federal.
And sometimes those things are in conflict. And that's where we lean on our solicitor to be able to provide us some data or some guidance on what we can do and what we can't do. And that doesn't always just mean going in line with what you're hearing. We're taking in data from a lot of different points.
Right. Awesome. So then the last thing to talk very briefly before we close out, the calendar revision. We're adding May 27th as an Act 80 day, which means no school for students. Staff will have opportunity for some professional development.
Yeah. It's not, this is the first year, so I think was it 2 years ago when we reevaluated our calendar to make sure that it met the needs of our diverse Spring-Ford community. We added Muslim holidays, Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And if I apologize to the community if I mispronounced that. But Eid al-Fitr, and we looked at Diwali as well for Hindu holidays, and of course still recognizing our Christian holidays and our Jewish holidays on the calendar. We wanted to make sure that when it was important for our students to have off and celebrate, that they're able to do that. And this year, I think this is the first year, while we've had Act 80 days for Eid al-Fitr, it's the first year that Eid al-Adha fell on a school day. And so that was not caught initially when we voted in January, but I'm glad that someone from the community came forward to make us aware of that so that we could go back and correct the issue.
As a school board director, our role is governance and budgetary, and so it's not typical that we would have our hands in creating a calendar for the district, because we don't know all of the ins and outs of those unique needs that are federally required or required by the state and educationally, but this is a unique opportunity for the community and the board and the administration to work together to create a calendar that reflects our needs. So it is good that it's something that we can work on together.
Right.
To ensure, it's a calendar, but it's the Spring-Ford calendar, so that may look different as far as other areas where there's different makeups, and I think it's great to be able to give our students and staff the days that are important for them, and so that they can not miss out educationally. I think that's a big, that was a big thing of, what our students, other commitments outside of school, what's important for their families, and then making sure that, that kind of support is continued in their school day too. So it's kind of a whole person approach.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You got it.
So is there anything else you guys would like to add before I close this out for us?
Well, we're definitely going to be seeing curtains this weekend, so we hope to see the community there. Plug for the 5K. So Mrs. Deerdorf, Mrs. Weingart, and I, we're going to definitely be there. We're sponsoring it this year, and it's always an event that brings out the best in our community. Like, everyone gathers. It's for a great cause in the Spring-Ford Educational Foundation, which offers assistance to our staff, scholarships for students. So if you haven't been a part of it, go out there and register.
April 11th.
April 11th.
2025.
I'm excited. This year I actually can come. I've had to work every year.
Yeah.
So my family has been there, but I will be there for the first time
All
this
right.
year.
Well, we'll all be there too. Thank you very much for watching Board Table Talk today. We'll see you next month.